Do you know the difference between growth and scale? Because you can build a growth company, a company that grows, or you can build a company that scales. You know the difference?
Your solution. But once it's out there, it grows, the revenue grows like, but your costs stay the same, or relatively the same. And of course, VCs, they are always looking for this thing. And typically, can you think of examples that are scaling like companies? FinTech. Come again? OpenAI. Facebook. So what do these options have in common? Software. It is something you make once and it just goes viral around the world. Of course, you need to continue to invest in marketing and things like that, but the growth of the revenue is much, much higher than how many people you need to add. You don't have to build any factories and all this kind of stuff, okay?
Does that mean growth company is worse? Does that mean it's worse to start a growth company than a scale company?
What do you guys think? Is a growth company worse than a scaling company? Exactly, it depends on your goals. So you can build a highly profitable growth company. Typically it takes a little bit longer, you know, and you have to have a different skill set. So your team has to be able to build infrastructure and hardware. And that requires a different skill set rather than like social media marketing skills, right? So, yes.
Oh, we don't do hardware.
Yes.
And I asked, well, but you wanted to have a talk about transportation. What do you think transportation is?
Exactly. So, but you're absolutely right. A lot of VCs, which I think is totally wrong, by the way, but that's only my opinion. But a lot of VCs do not want to touch anything with hardware. And that is mainly because it takes longer time and it costs more money in their mind. It's actually not true. But it's more complicated. So this is actually happening a lot in the US, that the VCs do not want to invest in hardware. But if you think about many of the best companies in the world, they are actually hardware companies. Of course, yeah.
Then they're more focused on big tech, right? They're more focused on software. They're investors rather than VCs that you can talk to if you're not looking. If you're looking.
Yeah, that's actually hardware. So there is the first thing is you need to decide what you want as founders. And we had a conversation, some of you yesterday and this morning, we were talking about that. If you know what you want, then what you do is you go out and you find investors that actually fit your view of the world. So let's say if you are building cars, it goes without saying that whomever joins you on that journey, may it be your staff, may it be your funding partner, they have to have the same vision, because otherwise it's going to be a shit show.
Sure.
So first is what you want, and then you find the right partners to go with you on that journey. I have both good experiences working with VCs, and I have like nightmare scenarios working with VCs. So your world completely changes the moment you take on VCs, because they have their own agenda. And that is, to your point, it is often the scaling agenda. So that's why whatever you do, make sure you know what you want and what it takes for you to build your company, and then you go out for funding. And there are VCs who actually invest in hardware. And there are VCs that only invest in hardware companies. You just need to find them. And then there's a lot of private investors. There's a lot of, for instance, when we started, we began with private investors. It was more expensive, but we went down that road. But then, so this is someone who can have an angel, so-called an angel investor, people who just are interested in the startup world and wants to give you money to see where you go. Most cases, they are investing with their heart, not necessarily with their head. They're just interested in the problem you're solving. So that is usually the first way to go. Then there are like small family offices of families who have a lot of money. And they usually have either a very specific place where they want to invest, or they have a really open mind. But they are often not afraid of hardware, because they many cases made their own wealth from building cars or whatever they may have been doing. So there is an investor out there for any type of company. You just have to have a really compelling value proposition, and you have to have a really compelling story about how your solution is solving that problem. And then you find the person. So yes, there are VCs out there that do hardware. They have a different horizon. They are usually what is called, they are patient money. So they are in for the longer term. So I sit on the board of 2 NASDAQ listed companies. And one of those companies, I don't know, have you seen in the Olympics, people who run with no legs? They have these plates. So I've been on the board of that company for 15 years. And the primary investor in that company, it's a publicly listed company, but the primary shareholder is a fund that only invests in hardware solutions. So these things exist for sure. And they've been in there for 20 years. So this is the type of investor you need if you are doing hardware.
Tell us about why you had your worst nightmare with a VC and the best time with them.
Yes,
later.
We'll talk about that. We need tequila when we talk about that. So, say again? Well, VC means venture capitalist. So these are companies who specialize in investing in startups and in companies, and they want high return on their investment. So let's say if you're a fast growing startup and you want to you need money, you have a few options. But one of the options is to go to this type of companies because they have a lot of money and they only invest in companies like yours. So, but the moment you take money from people like that, you are not only on your own journey, you're also on their journey. So it's a very important thing to know that. I'm not saying you should not do it. Like I did it myself so many times that I cannot not say you should do it. And sometimes it's the only way. If you need to scale super fast, VC money is the way to go. So let's say if there's a lot of competition in your space and time is of absolute essence to you, then, and you need money super fast, then VC is the way to go. But if you have time to what is called bootstrap your company, so you build it slowly but surely, and you grow it through your revenue stream, which we are about to talk about, then you own your company much longer. So we have seen cases where a founder, only 3 to 4 years after launch, only owns maybe 25% of the company, and VCs own the rest. So they have no control, they have no decision-making power. In theory, they're running the companies, but they don't. So it's very, very careful. We can talk about this all day, so I'm not gonna go any deeper into that, but it is, you have to think about it very carefully where your money is coming from and when you take it. So that's basically it. Where does it come from and when do you take it? And you should only take money if you know exactly what to do with it. A lot of startups think it's a sign of success to raise money because everybody is doing it. But you should never, ever, under no circumstances, raise money unless you know exactly where you're going to use it and why you need it, okay? So I'm happy to have those conversations offline with you guys for sure, but you wanna
I just wanted to second you mentioned, I think, know what to do with that money and make sure it's value add money. Not all money, even if you know what you're going to do with it, is created equal. And so we can answer specific questions, but it has to be value add money. How is this money adding value? I think most people assume just because you're getting the money, that's all the value you need. And some money comes really expensive at a really, is this investor gonna be like in the mix of everything without being an expert? Those are the types of questions you want to think.
Good point, actually. Okay, so now we're gonna dive into talking about how you're gonna make money. Show of hands, who knows exactly where your revenue is gonna come from? The word revenue, you understand the word revenue? Everybody understand the word revenue? It's basically who is paying you? What is revenue in Spanish? Ingresos. Ingresos. Okay, so you know where your ingresos is coming from. Okay, so that's number one. And we're going to talk about that today. So I had like 5 hands. Can I see it again? Who knows exactly where it's coming from? Okay, we have few hands, which is a good thing. The rest of you will discover it hopefully today. And you guys might actually change your mind where it's coming from, or you may not. We'll see. So there are 2 terms I want to talk to you about before we go further. So you will today identify what is called revenue stream. You might have multiple revenue streams. What that means is that you might generate revenue for your product. So you might get money by selling this. That's revenue stream number 1. But what could be another possible revenue stream? Service. Exactly. So I could sell data, or I could serve it. There's a service plan on this thing. And I'll show you a few more examples. So you will today have to identify a few revenue streams for you, because that's another thing of a healthy startup, is you have more than one revenue stream. Why is that important? Why do we need more than one revenue stream? We're doing it to reduce risk.
Multiply risk, no? If you're focusing on a lot of things.
That is, actually, there's always like happy medium. You want to manage your risk so you're not dependent on one payer, one way of making money, but then at the same time, you want to be able to stay focused. So typically, companies can have 2, 3, 4 revenue streams maybe, but they might not necessarily have 100, So that's number 1. Number 2 is what we call revenue model. Revenue model is, I'm going to show you a few examples of revenue models, and you are going to make your own. And revenue model talks about where your revenue comes from and who pays for it and how. Okay, so we're going to talk about that. So this one, you can hardly see it, but now when you dive into your thinking and discussing about revenue models, and those of you who've already identified where your revenue is coming from, keep an open mind. because you might actually discover something new. Because your revenue model needs to be based on the value proposition you just did this morning. It has to respond to that value proposition, okay? Secondly, it has to be tailored around your customer's ability to pay, okay? So it cannot be general. It has to be tailored around your first customer, okay? And then thirdly, you do not live in isolation. People have a choice. So you have to know what your competition is doing. And if there's no direct competition, there's this indirect competition we talked about yesterday. People are fulfilling these needs. They might do it in a very imperfect way, but they are doing it. How are they doing it today? So when you think about picking the best business model, revenue model for yourself, you have to have these three things in mind, okay? So, two more things, and then I show you the models. So, there are these terms, which is called transactional revenue. It's a one-time purchase. And then there's this so-called reoccurring revenue. Do you know the difference? He says you want to focus on the second one. He said you want to have reoccurring revenue. Yes, but I guess Rolls-Royce also has a lot of reoccurring revenue because the Rolls-Royce is always breaking down. Yeah, they are actually. So that's the whole idea, is that you have a one-time payment, and a car is a great example, because we buy the car, but actually the dealerships, at least in Europe and the US, I'm not sure how it's here, but the dealership, they actually make more money on the reoccurring service agreements, because your car says you have to go into the shop now, and we do what the car says, and we go to the shop. And so this is how they're making money. So think about this. As you pick your revenue models, or you design your revenue models, figure out if you can do these two things, that you can have a one-time transactional fee, and you can also have reoccurring, or if you can only have one, it should be reoccurring. You know what I'm saying? Okay. And an example of reoccurring, what is that? Service, prescription, your subscription service. It's like our Spotify, our YouTube, right? Netflix. Okay, he's saying that Uber, because they have the transactional fees, we pay for every ride. But then he's saying you can be a subscriber in Uber, and then you get some discount on those transactional fees, right? So Uber innovated not only on how they do business, but they innovated on their business model. So for many of you, your true genius might not necessarily be in your gizmo, your car or whatever you're making. In your case, it's the car, but then it's also in the model. The model can be truly your competitive advantage. So that's why it's so important for you to understand how things are done today. Okay, so let's get down to business. Here it is. I don't know, do you have this in front of you? Because this is super small on this. Let me see if I can zoom in. So, this is better, right? You can see it better, right? So, this is this revenue model. So actually the 10 revenue models you see, this is done from a survey that was done a couple of years ago about what are the most commonly used business models today for startups, okay? And number 3 on that list is the oldest revenue model in history. It is price is based on product cost, and then you put some margins on top. What is this? What is an example of this?
Sorry, how much it takes you to make the product, and then an extra layer on top of that? You pay. Well, that should be your profits, but also that should be, well, that shouldn't cover any expenses, or should it? Okay. So when we say 2 times the price, is just of purchasing raw materials, or?
Yeah, it's not 2 times. It's basically you have a base price
Uh-huh.
that is what costs you to make a thing.
Uh-huh.
And then you decide how much you need to add to that price so it can cover all your costs
Right.
and allow for some.
Right. And what should be good profit?
But it's a good profit margin. Yeah. 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 So it's different from industry to industry. So in the airline industry, having 1 or 2%, and it's also with like food stores. So chains that sell food in supermarkets and airlines, their profit margins are very small. They're anywhere between 2 to 5%. And the volume is so great that the profits turn out to be great. But there's a huge pressure on that margin. There's not much that can go wrong. But then in the pharma business, you have 40% profit, because because it's a totally different pricing model. So it depends on your industry. So you have to become experts in your industries. You have to know exactly what is acceptable profit margins in your industry, and you should go for those. So if you're planning to create an airline, expect a bumpy road. It might be difficult to get to profitability, but many of you have a chance to build highly profitable businesses. But the whole idea with this model is simply know your cost, and then you just put enough on it. But there's a ceiling to this approach. What is that? Can you just put whatever you like? The competition, you have to make sure, and people's ability to pay. So for the Rolls-Royce example, it costs probably, I don't know what costs to make a Rolls-Royce, but it certainly does not cost the same as they're charging us for the thing. So if you take Audi and Skoda and Volkswagen, they all have the same basic frame. Did you know that? The inside, structure is all the same. It's the brand